Hi, what you're looking at is a NuTone IMA4006 master station. This particular master station, it was manufactured sometime around 1992 or so. This is not your standard run-of-the-mill 4006. This is what we refer to as an expanded 4006 master station. Back from the very beginning in 1986, the IM and IMA4006 series, the master station came out of the box with a standard capacity of 1 master station up to 9 remote stations, and the remote stations could be a combination of inside and patio remotes, and up to 3 entry door stations. Now let's say that you were building a really big house in 1992. Maybe you were building your 7,800 square foot dream house, and 9 stations and a master is not really going to cut it. You really want to have more than that. You've got a really big backyard, and you have maybe 2 decks in the back upstairs on the second level off 2 bedrooms, and just there you need 4 or maybe 5 patio speakers. You really want to put 1 speaker in the garage, and you want a speaker in the laundry room, and you've eaten up most of your 9 remote stations that you could possibly have. NuTone was thinking ahead from the very beginning, and the 4006 series, it had the ability to be expanded beyond the standard 9 remote stations that came with it out of the box, and you could add into the master station something called an expansion kit, and when you added the expansion kit in, you got more stations. In a standard installation, this panel behind the right hand door would be blank, but in an expanded version you have more additional room control switches. So it extends or expands your capacity up to 1 master station, up to 19 remote stations, and that's a combination of inside and patio. Or if you're really going way over the top, you can do ceiling speakers or wall speakers and volume controls. There was a lot of equipment available for systems like this back in those days, and you could create a really great system. Of course, you can still have your 3 entry door stations. And yes, I have installed many expanded 4006 systems, and we've actually done houses where, because the customer required it, we actually know how to cheat it beyond the 20 that you're allowed to have. You can go a few more than that if you're really clever about it, but the maximum recommended total was 20. So let's take a look at what came in an expansion kit. Here we have a new old stock NuTone IA410 10-station expansion module for use with the IM4006 series intercom system. There are 2 versions of these. There's the IA410, which is the ribbon wire configuration expansion module, and then there is the IAA410, which they began using with the IMA series when NuTone abandoned the flat 6-conductor ribbon wire design and went back to using IW6, which is 3 twisted pair cable. The terminal board configurations will be different. The rest of the expansion kit is the same, and actually either version can be installed in either type of master station. You can use a ribbon cable expansion kit in a IW6 twisted pair cable installation, or vice versa. It doesn't really make any difference. Go ahead and open this up, and you'll see there's actually quite a bit in one of these, more than what most people might imagine. Now, one of the things about using a kit like this is if you were doing a really large installation, what we used to tell people was that your 10th station is your most expensive station. If you were adding a 10th station into a standard installation, or you had a standard master station, you still have to buy the expansion kit. So the cost of the expansion kit would only be amortized over 1 additional station. So if you're all in, maybe you should add 4 or 5 more stations and help spread out the cost. Sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't, but the 10th station was always the most expensive station. So what we have in here is, try and get it out, we'll start off with we have another type of power transformer. We have a NuTone 301T, and we have a much deeper transformer mounting box which goes through the slot in the wall housing behind the master station. Why do we have a bigger transformer? Well, the original transformer with an IM or an IMA4006 is a NuTone 105T, and a 105T is 16 volts at 30 watts. Since we're expanding and driving more stations, the system, and primarily the amplifier, needs more wattage, more power. So now we're going up to a 301T, which is 16 volts at 30 watts. So we'll put that aside. And yes, you do have to install this. And then inside this box, this is where all the goodies are. We have the right-hand panel overlay which fits around the stations. This is a self-adhesive strip, and you peel it off. You take the old one, the original one off, and you put this. And there are cutouts in the plastic faceplate that allow the switches to poke through, and then this identifies what everything is. So you get one of those. And then you also get in here three things. Here we have our expansion terminal board. Now this terminal board, because this is an early kit, this is a ribbon wire terminal board. If this was the IAA410, it would be a different configuration, same size, same basic idea, but you would have rows and rows and rows of screw terminals, and the relays would be in a different position and so forth. But for the purposes of this demonstration, this is fine. This would mount in the back of the wall housing on the right hand side, and then you have these two short cables here, and these reach over and plug into sockets on the standard terminal board to connect the two terminal boards together. Then down the right hand side here, we have sockets for all of the cables that are going to come off the expansion board that gets added into the master station. And I'll show you how that goes in a second. In this packet, we have a circuit board. These are our additional room control switches. These are the switches that you see when you open up the right-hand door on the master station, and these have the same, they're 4 positions as the standard ones, and when you do the installation, this fits across the front like this, and that's what it looks like when you open the door. And then here we have sort of really the heart of the whole expansion kit. We have the expansion intercom control board. These are components that mimic some of the original components on a standard 4006 master station, and this is what gives you control of the additional room stations. The additional 10 remote stations are controlled by these 3 chips, and they're grouped as 3, 3, and 4. And each chip has its individual grouping of stations that it controls, along with the support components here. This gets installed into the master station. So let's look at a real master station with one of these, and I'll show you how it looks when it's all put together. So here we're looking at the back of our IMA4006, and down here, well, let's identify where we're looking at. Right here, this section, this is the back of the cassette player, and this round cylinder right here, this is the cassette player motor. Just below the cassette player motor is our AM/FM tuner board, and below the AM/FM tuner board right here, this is our expansion board, and that's the board that I showed you earlier. That's this board, and it gets mounted underneath the tuner on standoffs that were provided on all 4006s, so it's mounted right under the board just like that. And coming off that board are the interconnect cables, which in this particular master station is this cable, and this cable, and this cable, the little one, and this one here, and this one here. In front of that, down here, where it's really hard to see, is where the switchboard assembly gets installed, and switches face forward and it mounts to the back of the faceplate, and there are some cables that come off of it and they plug into the standard switchboard over here, and there's also a larger cable that comes off the end of it and it plugs into a socket on the end of our expansion board right here. And by installing all of those and plugging them all together, those boards are now incorporated into the working design of your IMA or IM4006 master station. We're looking at the two terminal boards. The left-hand terminal board is the standard terminal board that all IM and IMA4006s use. And here on the right is our expansion terminal board, the one you saw me take out of the box, and they would be mounted side by side in the wall housing just like that. And then to connect them together, you take the two short cables off the expansion terminal board and you simply loop them over and plug them in like this. And this makes the necessary connections between the two boards, therefore between the two sets of speakers and the wiring and the interconnect cables, so it all works together as if it were one giant board with all of this originally included. Here in this example, I'm going to show you how the interconnect cables plug into the two terminal boards. This is not installed in the wall housing. If it were, these two terminal boards would be standing up behind the unit like this. But for the purposes of this demonstration, because I think it will be easier to see, I'm going to do it flat on the board like this. So what you have is, we'll do the standard side first, because everyone's going to have those. And the ribbon cables that come off the back of the set plug into these sockets that go up the left-hand side of the terminal board. Now, the way this is designed, each one of these sockets, thereby each one of the plugs that fit into them, each one is its own unique shape and own unique size. And the theory behind this was that it would be virtually impossible to plug them into the wrong spots on the board because they only really fit one way. So we'll start here at the bottom because that's how you would normally do it when you're installing this in a wall, and you find your first cable and it plugs into the socket like this. And then we move up to the next cable, which is this one. And it plugs in here. Like that. And then our third cable is the white one. And it plugs in here. Now, there are ground wire lugs here. They're marked. Sometimes they say ground, sometimes they say earth. It depends on when the system was manufactured. On these early boards, you have 2 ground lugs. On later boards, you have 3. This particular IMA4006 has 3 ground wires, but we're going to pretend it only has 2. If you have 3 ground wires, you'll have 3 ground lugs. You plug in all of them. That's the basic idea. And then we have the 4th one, which is the other brown one. And it plugs in here. And then the last one is the white one with the multicolored cable, and it plugs in here at the top. This amount of connecting is done on all 4006s, and we now have connected our IMA4006 master station to the first 9 remote stations on the system. But since this is an expanded system, we have to plug in all of the connections on the expansion terminal board. And the idea of this is exactly the same. You have 5 sockets. Each socket is a different size and shape, and the connectors that plug into the sockets are their own unique size and shape also. Again, we'll start down here at the bottom where the littlest one is, and that's the easiest one because there's only one that's little, and that's this one. And this customer, let me point this out. This customer, when he removed his set, he was very smart and he followed the advice in our IM and IMA4006 removal video, and he labeled each cable as he took it off with some masking tape. And for instance, on this one he wrote small white 12, which is the number of the connector, bottom right. So now he knows where that one goes. So that one plugs in there, and then we move up to this one. And this one plugs in here, and then we go up to the third one, which is the brown one, which goes here, and then the 4th one plugs in. And here we also have 2 ground lugs, and on this side we have 2 ground wires, so we'll plug those in. On all intercom systems, if they have ground wires, they must be connected, otherwise the intercom system will be unhappy and it won't work properly. And then we have the last one, which is right here, and it plugs into the socket at the top. And now our additional 10 stations are now connected to the system. And if you went all out and you spent all the money that you had, you would have a fully maxed out 20 station system. It's all connected together, it's incorporated into the design, and they all work the same. And you would have lots and lots of stations everywhere. Now, of course, when this is in the wall with all of this connected, it's standing up behind the set in the wall cavity like this, and then all of the wiring comes in from all your remote stations. So there's going to be a lot of wires in the wall behind it. When you have to remove one of these systems, you need to watch our removal video, which covers the standard installation that everyone has on the left-hand terminal board. But if you have an expanded system, then you also have to disconnect this. And it's really fundamentally the same as doing this side. You just simply unplug each thing, usually starting at the top. And if you want to, you can use your phone to take pictures, or you can label them like this customer did, or perhaps you do both just to make sure. Sort of the belt and suspenders idea on that, because this is probably the only time you're going to do this, so you might as well mark it all out. So once you get this side all disconnected, then you have to disconnect the standard side, which is really the same. This is a very good design. The idea of using different shaped and different size connectors works really well. You disconnected it all, and you've disconnected a few other things. Your master station will just lift away, and the terminal boards stay in the wall housing. Answer a question that I get asked quite often when people are contemplating removing their 4006 master station to send it in for repair. They'll ask me, do I need to send the terminal boards with it? And the answer in most cases is no. These terminal boards have very little that go wrong with them. Primarily, it's a lot of sockets where wires plug into. There are a few screw terminals, or if you have the later ones with all the rows, there's lots and lots and lots of rows of screws. Nothing really much ever goes wrong with the screws. The sockets where things plug in are very sturdy, so that's not a problem. These little boxes here, the blue boxes with the white caps, these are relays, and they are what control some of the functions of the remote stations, and these are very high quality relays. I have never had an occasion where one of these need to be replaced. Now, there is one thing that sometimes happens on these boards, but it doesn't happen very often. Here on this board, the original board, you have this little group of 5 little black components here, and then there's a few other ones. There's one here, and then over here there's the same little black components here, here, and a group of 5 over here. And those little components are transistors. Here is the close-up of the group of 5 transistors on the expansion board, and these transistors, their job is to activate the relays when it's necessary. Now, I've been an authorized NuTone service center for more than 32 years. And in 32 years in this local area, I have only ever seen 2 cases where one of these transistors have failed. And when the transistor fails, the relay that it's associated with will no longer operate, and you get weird functionality on that individual station. And I still remember the service call I was on the very first time that I encountered that, and I would have sworn that it was a wiring problem. The cable between the master and the remote speaker must have had a break in it or something like that, and the station wasn't working correctly. And after checking the wire and checking the station and checking lots of other things, I determined all of that was good, and the only thing that really left was either a serious problem with the master station, which was unlikely, because as I explained on the control board for the remote speakers, speakers are grouped together per control integrated circuit. So this one might control 3 stations, and this one might control 3 stations, and this one might control 4 stations. And if you had a problem with one of these chips, it would most likely affect all 3 stations connected to it, and that wasn't what was going on at the customer's house. So the only thing that left was a problem with the terminal board. So I went out to the van, I took out a replacement terminal board that I knew was good, temporarily put it in, and voila, the problem was gone. Yes, it is possible that every once in a while, and it's not very likely, one of these could fail. The thing that you would do, unless you had a fully maxed out system, let's say that you had a system that had all 9 on the original terminal board over here, or you had all 20 on the expanded terminal board, so every socket was full with wire, which is not usually the case. Most people don't have 20 stations, so on the expansion board you might have 4 stations or 5, but then you've got a bunch of unused spots. So let's say, for instance, that this little transistor right here is the one that failed, and it's controlling the station number 13. So you've got a ribbon cable plugged into 13. And the transistor has failed, so the relay for 13 doesn't operate, and remote station number 13 doesn't work correctly. But you have a bunch of unused ones down here. They've never been used because you don't have those additional 5 speakers. This is what we would do. This is what we call a field fix. So you give the customer a choice. Well, ma'am, I can remove your terminal board and go back to the shop and get another one and charge you to reinstall it, and so on and so on. Or we can simply unplug number 13, which is a problem, and we'll just move it down here to number 15, which has never been used, and the transistor for 15 is fine, so the relay for 15 is fine, so remote station 15 is also fine. Problem solved. And I can go now. She'll always choose to have the cable moved because it's a good field fix. It doesn't require an additional trip, and it doesn't require any parts. Therefore, it's less expensive. So those are the ins and outs of the additional equipment and how that equipment gets installed into a NuTone IM or an IMA4006 master station when you have an expanded system. And there are more expanded systems out there than you might imagine. I would say fully 1/3 of the master stations we have sent in for repair are expanded systems, because back in those days, people built a lot of really big houses and they really liked the intercom system, so they had them everywhere. So your expansion kit consists of a larger transformer mounting enclosure, the expanded terminal board, the expansion control board, the expansion room control switchboard, with the decorative overlay that goes behind the door. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.